All right, we're back with the SE Kefka finals for game three. I'm just going to read up on what I missed in chat, and then I will be back with you. Okay. Um, do yeah, Turdz is laming AA rares, clearly cheating, stacking. Stacking's the word. So he isn't this game. Turdz has had first turn in both the first two games. This is Deli's first turn, and he also has an AA rare this time. Turdz has had the first turn player has had an AA rare in every game. Deeply suspicious. Um, just responding to stuff. Sorry. Was Champions League happening today? I should probably check into that as well. Too much going on. Um, which is to say, I really should have checked messages before starting the next video so you didn't have to suffer through this. But, okay. I think I've checked everything. Let's see what's happening in the Champions League. Dortmund 1-0 PSG. Nice. I do not want PSG to win it, and I do not want Real Madrid to win it because Real's the worst, but PSG is similar to me. Um, I've never minded Bayern. I liked them more when they had Lahm because Philip Lahm is the best, but I never mind Bayern. This seems like a terrible Bayern team, but it would be kind of funny if they won the Champions League. And Dortmund also seem not great, right? It'd be funny to have a double German final with neither of them having won the Bundesliga, and in fact, with both of them having been absolutely demolished by Leverkusen in it, who someone in the Triple Tri community regularly tells me is inevitable. Okay, time to think about the game. How long have we been going? 2.5 minutes of absolute useless nonsense. Delhi with a lot of cards with A's to the left and very little power to the right. Now, Turdz does not have a way to capture Delita, so the obvious thing to do is Delita in 9. And there's no setups against it. So, yeah, I'd probably start with Delita in 9 and not think too much about it. And you have enough power down and right, you can face the action. But Delhi is different than me. I tell this story far too much, but I remember maybe in 2000, late 2008, I was watching a Delhi game. Maybe this was 2009. I don't know. And it was a low level game. He had a 5-5 corner. It could not be taken. All right, we do see the natural starter. One thing I think is nice about Delhi's play is he looks for other options, but will take the automatic corner, right? I think a lot of us take it automatically, and taking it automatically, like it's right, like 85, 90% of the time. And if you play it 100%, like that other 10, 15%, it's probably not wrong, it's just not optimal. But Delhi will try to squeeze out that 10, 15% of the time. There are some people who know something is what everyone does and will avoid it way too much. And I think Delhi is in that kind of sweet spot in between where if it's like right to play the safe corner 80% of the time, he actually does play it 80% of the time. And I tend to play it like 95% of the time. There was a game in a chat tournament I was really proud of. It was on second turn, but someone played a starter in 7 against me, and I had a safe reply in 3, but it gave up all power facing the action. It was my only good card going down left, and I decided not to play it, and it would have been a losing move. It would have been conceding too much power. Um, so I'm proud that there's at least one spot where a move of this type I correctly turned down. But my range is like I will usually play it, and I usually won't think too much about it. I will need a lot of reason not to play it. So I probably play this kind of move 95% of the time. I think there's some people that play it 100, and I think Delhi plays it 80, 85%, and I think he's in the sweet spot. So my story about the 5-5 is he had a 5-5 corner, completely safe. Same and plus were on, but there was no possible setup against it. It was safe whenever. And so, of course, Deli played in three. The corner was for seven, and just said, this card's going to dominate whatever happens. It sweeps everything, and it did indeed sweep the end game and delivered the win at the end, right? And so Deli doesn't define aggressive and defensive like this, but I do. So, and I'm the one talking. Where I think of defensive as going for like immediate value now, right? And I think of aggressive as keeping value for later control of the board. And so, where playing the safe corner in seven, I would think that's a strong defensive move. Playing in three, I thought was a strong aggressive move, right? He did not play something that was difficult for he or his opponent to take, and he kept cards for later that could potentially sweep the action. And playing to your sweepers, doing things that are less effective this move but benefit your future turns, is something Deli and Seto are really good at. Um, and yeah, here it seems sensible to just use the card though. And once again, Turdz is under pressure, right? Once again, for the third time in a row, I think basically entirely based on the hands, though I really liked how Deli played the first game. That might have been the one I think wasn't. But I think this is another difficult situation. It's really hard to put something, you can't put something equally safe on board. And it's scary to put something that Deli can attack when Deli has just played something you cannot attack. On the other hand, I think basically as long as you don't use Braska, you're probably fine with whatever move. I said I wouldn't talk about the rule set more. So, um, yeah, we'll just say I think this looks really scary, and so it's probably slightly scary. And like, would I be surprised if Shuyin 8 was a tie? No, not at all. Not at all. Would I be surprised if Shuyin 6 was a tie? Nope, not at all. Would I be surprised if 8578 and 1 was a tie? No. I mean, these all seem to me like moves that would normally feel very dangerous, but here should probably be sufficient. All right, he's picked up none of those cards. The last game, I predicted the first three moves correctly, which is to say, I didn't say my moves were predictions, but I said this seems like a reasonable move they could make, and then they made that move. But it was like specifically the main move I had identified as a reasonable move. Um, I have just received a message from one of the competitors saying, this set is so tie-ish, I can't tell if it's a forced loss or not. Looks damn close. Yeah. So this, like, might be winning for Deli. Like, all normal rules say this should be winning. Incidentally, I think this is a tie. Um, but the set is so prone to ties that, like, is it actually winning? Now, there is a down weakness for Turdz here. I am reminded there was in a chat tournament I played against Ray Emanator, and in the first game I had a humongous hand advantage, and I played basically safely and won. And he played a move in three that made a threat in two, so I was likely to block two, and then he just had a recapture in six, and it just turned out all the L's were fine for him. It was fine. He could never take one. He gets to lock in a card in three, and it's just fine. It was a brilliant tie. He played a fantastic game. He went from a game I was basically sure I had won from the hands to like, oh, this is just obviously a tie. Great job to him. And this is one of those moves that might do the same thing. It does not create a threat in eight explicitly, but like putting Braska in eight seems like pretty nice, right? You're certainly happy to achieve that. And if Deli goes in eight, Turdz can just recapture in four. And as long as that L isn't a complete disaster, he probably holds the tie. So this seems very similar to that. Incidentally, the second game of that match, I think Ray actually played even. No, I think the first game he played better, but the second game was also a great game by him. He absolutely wiped the board with me. The first game I had a huge hand advantage, and he very cleanly tied it. And the second game he had a big hand advantage, and he very cleanly beat me. And I was more impressed by him holding the tie, but you could argue either one was better. Either way, he played a great pair of games and absolutely destroyed me. But I'm reminded of that first game because sometimes, like, ideally, the adjacent corner sets up a threat in eight, attacks the side you couldn't already take. In this case, it sets up no threat. You couldn't take it either way. But sometimes you don't need any of that. All you need is whatever they play in 8, you can play in 4 with a card you can then recapture easily. And it just turns out as long as you can recapture your own cards enough, that is sufficient to tie. This one seems a hard ask for me on that front. I'm going to start putting in the hands, and I'm just curious what the solver says because I am lazy. But I did, the moves I mentioned I find a little more appealing than this one, but I could very easily be wrong. I so often am. And this rule set is very drawish, but is also tricky to play well. And I did say I think the most interesting spots will be when someone is in extreme danger. Can they find holds, and can the opponent find wins against those holds? So Delhi starts in 9, and I thought Shuyin in 8 was probably a tie. And we'll have the solver check that first. I'll check my moves first so that Turdz' move can come with more like, ooh, was that good? Shuyin 8 is a tie. I thought Shuyin 6 was a tie. And we will see in a moment if that's the case. Takes a bit to do this. Shuyin 6 is not a tie. Shuyin 6 is terrible. What an embarrassing move. I definitely never said that. And I thought like something like 8, 5, 7, 8, and 1 was a tie. I did say Shuyin 8 before Shuyin 6. I did think it was the better one, in my defense. 8, 5, 7, 8, and 1 also loses, suggesting this is very dangerous. Yeah, if 2 of my 3 suggestions lost, that is trouble. What about Turdz' move? Did Turdz do better than me? Turdz' move ties. Now, that doesn't mean he's not under extreme pressure. Just playing a first move that ties by no means means you will hold the game. But very nicely done, and soon it will split out. How many ties did Turdz have total after Deli's starter? 8. 8 of 40. 1/5 of his moves tie. So dangerous, but not one of those you have to find like an exact 1 or 2 moves, but fairly close to that. It seems like going in 8 was probably the easiest square to tie from. That looks like it had the most ties. All right, Deli goes in 8 himself, which is the natural square to go. And Turdz has 3 ties here, but they are in the squares you'd expect, right? The only places you look here, unless you are one of those lunatics who likes to go in 1 or 3, which incidentally can hold, but here doesn't make much sense, is to go in 4 or 5, right? Those are the only squares you have captures, and especially in a no rules game, that means those are the only squares you check. And there is 2 ties in 4 and a tie in 5. That means there are 2 losses in 4. I'm going to assume Shuyin in 5 is the tie in 5 because anything else is kind of nonsensical. Indeed, that is the case. I'm going to assume Braska in 4 does not tie. And my guess, looking at the others, so we know of Terra, Shuyin, and 8578, 2 of those tie in 4, and 1 of them doesn't. Which one do you think it is? My first instinct is hold on to Shuyin so you have a threat in 5. Yeah, I'm going to guess Shuyin is the losing move in 4. And I'm correct. Shuyin in 4 loses a million ways. Oh, it's same walled. Duh, what am I doing? Okay, so either of the cards with an 8 up in 4 or Shuyin in 5 tie here. Which is actually, again, I think like the first game, Deli was the more impressive player. Every game, Deli has had an advantage, but I think that comes from hands. In the first game, I thought Deli did the more impressive stuff. I really liked his reply to 4 and 6. In the second game, I thought Turdz did the more impressive stuff, and here again, I think Turdz will do the more impressive stuff. Now, it is easier to do more impressive stuff on the losing side of a tie, obviously. You're the one who had to find a way to hold. But I think he's done a really nice job if he manages to hold this, and he almost certainly will, right? There's very little to do except stick something that doesn't get same walled in 4, and if you are going to do something else, you're probably going to play Shuyin in 5, and these are the ties. So this is again to say the margin of tie is very big, and yeah, one of those things of it's hard to say how big an advantage you need to have serious winning chances. Now, I think after Delhi's starter, it this was very losable for Turdz. I think it's probably not losable for someone of Turd's caliber anymore, and Turdz should be commended for not losing this game, presuming he doesn't lose it. But again, it's to say it's very hard to get a win here. And the problem with it being very, I really said I wouldn't talk about rules, but the problem with it being very hard to get a win here is if it's easier to get a win, then you have a chance to win from a worse hand. Then balanced hands, whoever outplays, has a chance to win. If it's very hard to get a win, then the question really is who do the random gods smile upon, and who do they smile upon by a lot? And here, so far, they've smiled on Delhi, but they haven't smiled on Delhi by quite enough that I actually think he could have ever converted. Like, I think Turdz makes this move in seven, and he ties this game every time. I think Turdz basically has no chance to have lost a game so far, despite being in multiple very scary situations. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm jumping too much to he did tie, therefore he was necessarily going to tie, and that's definitely not the case. But but I think we still haven't seen sufficient advantage out of the hands. And all right, Turds does go for five. He plays the fancy pants move, but this also holds. And yeah, we will be seeing a tie shortly. I'm going to go reply to messages. The margins here are just quite large. Uh, too many people messaging me. Wait, someone scored somewhere. Where? It's not Premier League. Premier League isn't happening today. We're recording this on a Wednesday. It's not Champions League because someone said go Liverpool. Liverpool are not in the Champions League. Dortmund still lead 1-0. Should probably Google Liverpool. That might be the way to know what Liverpool's up to. What's happening? Wait, what? Oh, is Europa League happening? Oh, it's the Women's Super League. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, go Liverpool. Boo Chelsea, of course. All right, that took me too long to find. Okay, what else we got in our messages? Uh, Delhi wanted to go three as his second move, but he thought Braska in six was a good reply. That sounds right to me, right? You've sort of almost safeties in three, but not quite sufficient. Um, yeah, sorry. The problem with bringing up the solver is I immediately lose interest in calculating or like analyzing the position because the result is, you know, in my head resulted. But I think on this it especially makes some sense to do that. So instead, I think I'll talk about the three moves I really liked this match, or the two moves I've liked most. The first move I really liked was Turd started in four, and Delhi played in six with a move I wouldn't remotely consider because he did not have a recapture from three. There was an A facing up, and A's can't be taken, basically, without rares, because no plus or plus wall. But that meant essentially he was playing in a side with the effect of a corner. Neither can take, and it is weak in two directions. But Delhi has a better capture in nine. He can capture safely in nine. Turdz can't. Turdz has a slight up weakness, so his only way to capture from nine is pretty limited, which is why actually Turdz reasonably blocked nine and got rid of it. And also it set up a same in five, which meant Delhi now has better play in two squares than Turdz does. And they both, after the starter in four, had good play in one and seven, but Delhi created squares where essentially he has an advantage on the board. And I don't think they paired in an obvious way. Like when Turdz plays nine, Delhi did not, in fact, reply in five. It wasn't quite that they were paired squares, where anytime someone goes one, you go the other. It was more, these are just squares that are favorable to me and unfavorable to you, and I'm trying to create as many squares that play well for me as possible. At least that's how I'd look at it. And it was a really good move. Turds had very few ties. Um, and he did find one, and he played it nicely. But I thought that was a really nice move, and that was actually, I think, the smallest advantage Delhi has had out of the rule sets, and yet it was arguably one of the more dangerous positions Turds has been in. Um, when the game is early enough, it's quite hard to calculate securely to the end. And then in game two, I liked how Turds used his many corners for seven, dropping one of them in three, and then after Delhi played seven, finding a nice way to use another one in four. And I think that was a nice way to negotiate a tie. And here in game three, after Delhi's safe starter in nine, again, I think Delhi is one of the players who, like, to talk about in poker terms, like balancing your range. Now, in triple triad, you shouldn't balance your range in the same way. Like, maybe you shouldn't closed, but in open, like, you shouldn't be like, I play here 80% of the time. All right, flip a few coins. Okay, this was the 20%. No, it's that sometimes there's enough features in the position that benefit something else that you shouldn't take the obvious safe corner. Here, Dully should take the obvious safe corner. He did take the obvious safe corner, and Turds found a really nice adjacent corner to balance it and keep the game steady. All right, Delhi also thought of Galoof in 4 as his second move. That seems curious. Again, Delhi is a player that sees more candidate moves than most of us do. And that's part of why he uses so much time and can use it effectively, is he sees more ideas than most people see. And actually, after Galoof in 4, there is one tie for Turds. Now, that ties the obvious square. It is to go in 8. But there is a choice. Is it Terra or Shuyin in 8? Now, my first instinct is obviously Terra, because Shuyin is plussed, but plus isn't a rule. So do you want to keep Shuyin or do you want to keep Terra? My guess is you want to keep Shuyin because the 8 facing down gives you captures on things like Galoof. So my guess is Terra 8 is the tie, and it is Terra 8. But that's a quite interesting idea. Like the response to it is the obvious reply. So like I think you're never winning there, but interesting that you could create a situation with only one win. Looks like moves happened. So Turds must have played 8-5-7-8 in 1, and Delhi played A5-A1 in 6, and 3-7-9-A sufficiently sweeps, and we get a tie. A9-3-5-2, 3-7-9-A3, Terra remaining, and our third tie. Now, just because a rule set leads to a lot of ties does not mean it is in fact tie-ish, drawish. Certain rule sets are certainly more likely to lead to many draws, but 3 times in a row is not indicative of anything. It is indicative of the players being really balanced, right? I think with these specific hands, it means a little more that these games were drawn than it normally would. And if we already have a strong suspicion that it is tie-ish, then maybe a bunch of ties in a row helps confirm that. But I would say 3 ties in a row is not like enough yet that we should say, kill the rule set, move on to the next one. On the other hand, if you get to like 6 or 8, maybe you start more strongly considering that. But I think any rule set they switch to, a tie is very much the likely result. Um, um, yeah. One sec, sending messages and stuff. Wanted to let both players know that the games had been ties the whole way, that no mistakes had been made, because I think it can be nice to know that. And if you're going to tell one, you should certainly tell both. Um, right? Because it is you don't. I mean, it means less in randoms than it does in a non-random game, right? If you know that in a non-random game, that gives you a lot of information. Um, which is why I try to, for instance, if I use the solver, I try to either tell neither player or make sure to tell both um, what it's saying, because I do think that's a competitive advantage. All right, so that was game three down. Are we going to get a game four? Probably. Might go all day. Who knows? I was going to try to get outside soon. But are some profiles too bright? Dismiss. I don't care. Stop it, Discord. Do. You know what? I should pause until the next game comes up. You're welcome. And we are back. Deli first turn for the second time of this match. We have had two first turns now for Turdz, and then two first turns for Deli. Did this continue the important pattern of the series of first turn always gets an AA rare? It did not. Neither player has an AA rare. We haven't really seen them come into effect. They're the only cards that you could imagine being like full on side to side or up down sweepers. But you'd have to position the game so well for that, and both players have been either uninterested in aiming for that because it just might not be attainable, or very good at avoiding any lines where it might end up being the case. We did see something similar, I guess, in game two with the Q, but not very importantly. Okay. Deli has three cards with no A on them, which seems pretty bad. The closer you get to no rules, the more having A's is useful. But per usual, I am not super convinced this should matter, and he did get another safe starter. Now, his play after that looks more difficult than last time, so I think this is much less promising. But there is Fafnir in 7, and per usual on this rule set, if you can't take something immediately, it is very unlikely you can set up against it. Here, there are a couple ways to set up one side or the other, but never both, and that will always give sufficient time to block whatever the setup side is. On the other hand, Turdz has A's in all direction except to the left, where he maxes at a 9, which means Sabin could potentially be valuable, or Deli's 8A63. Um, his 9A64 is also potentially safe, so it seems very likely we get some kind of Fafnir in 7, Cecil in 4 or 8, probably 8, because the square most conceded by going is whatever the square next to it is. Anytime you go, if you meet 7 with 4 or 8, you create a kind of a potential half safety in 1 or 9, a card that only has one side facing out, and you really want that to not be a square they have an easy good play in. And if Deli has used Fafnir, he has no safety in 9, but as long as he is 8A63 or 7967, he has safety in 1. So he's very likely he will have safety in 1, but he will not have safety in 9. So Fafnir 7, Cecil 9 seems like a very natural way for this game to start. And that looks favorable to Turdz for me. I don't think Deli has an obvious move to make there. I think that's a bit uncomfortable. So Deli may be looking elsewhere than going 7. Like I said, I think most players are kind of either Fafnir 7, like close to 100%, or don't really like playing for big corners and are Fafnir 7, like way under 50%. And I think the correct answer is about 80% of the time you grab that safe corner. And again, I think that's what Deli plays. Uh, from what my looking so far, I probably would play Fafnir in 7 and just like hope I'd figure something out against 8, um, which may not sound like a very compelling plan to you, but it's where I'd be at, I think. But I could also really easily see Deli chucking like a weak corner in 3, right? Saying, I have these 2 cards for 7. Let's just play a weak corner 3. Maybe you'll go Cecil 7, but then I can at worst play Fafnir in 4 or 8, right? It's not the end of the world. Yeah, he does go the weak corner in 3. This was the other kind of natural way to play it. And reminiscent a little of Turdz' play in game 2, where he had 3 corners for 7. 4? 3.5? Depends on if A5, A1 counts as a corner for 7. Let's say 3.5 corners for 7, and played one of them in 3, where all his other cards are happy to see it. Here, Deli has 3 corners for 7, and all corners for bottom squares, and thus plays in the top, where he's going to have more ability to face the action. Now, if you're Turdz, Cecil 7 is a obvious thing to do. One thing to worry about if you play Cecil 7, ooh, this is a nice point from Deli I missed. Deli could play 2, because your only capture in 6 is comboed by 8A, 6, 3, and 9. There actually is so far this match, we have seen one same setup by Deli that was not in fact played, and then later that game, a same setup by Turdz. We have seen one same setup by each player, but we have never seen it very relevantly. Like, the square that the same was in was very quickly blocked reliably by the opponent, right? It was never something that created lasting pressure in the same position. It was never something that like held force. Here, if Cecil, however you want to pronounce it, Americans pronounce it Cecil, Brits pronounce it, I think, Cecil, and for some reason I've been saying it the British way. What nonsense am I under? All right, Cecil, the Dark Knight. If it comes out of Turdz' hand, then there is a serious problem in that Deli might go into. Say with something like Shuyan, where Turdz' only capture from 1 is not safe, and if Turdz does play safety in 1, not that big a deal because it didn't capture anything, and Deli could respond with safety in 4. So actually, Deli found not just a card to put in 3, but he found that by playing in 3, he has more counterplay against Cecil landing than he would if he had started in 7. Neat. That's interesting. Per usual, I have a prediction about this game and what its result will be. But just because I think a result is very likely doesn't mean the game getting there isn't very interesting. And I think this was a neat first move and somewhat comparable to Turdz' play in game 2. But looking at these hands, you don't immediately go, oh, someone is just dead meat instantly. And if you don't go, someone is dead meat, then the winning odds are very low, right? And if you do go, someone is dead meat, then you got to decide, are the winning odds still low or are they actually pretty high? And if they're pretty high, like there's a point where it swings. It swings hard, where we go from, okay, this is a clear advantage. That's just not good enough. This is going to be a tie. To this is a huge advantage. There is no counterplay at all because you can't set up anything. You cannot complicate in any way. You cannot set up against anything. So there is this swing point where it goes from, big advantage. It's nothing. They're just going to tie. Like, there's no serious winning chances despite how big it is, to, oh, huge advantage. There is no counterplay at all. The game is over. And I just don't believe there is much room in between those things. Maybe the games so far have been a counterpoint to that. You might argue that Turdz' defense in games 2 and 3 has been really exceptional, and those games were high risk, and I am wrong. It's possible. It's very possible. All right. Well, Deli says that was a bad starter, just as I'm impressed by it. Um, so that's funny. I'm gonna close Discord again. I think I get overly distracted. We'll try to only have it open between games. Um, Turdz goes in 5. All right. He has 2 sames. Okay, I missed this. I missed the same potential. This is what Deli might have seen and why he decided it was bad. I was not remotely considering that moves like this might be possible. This was very much a blindness on my part. Is same potential just seemed like, oh, well, that's never happening. Now, my instinct is 2 and 6 are now very good squares for Turdz and very bad squares for Deli. So you just got to get rid of them. So I would play 9, 2, 8, 9, and 6 and say, if you want to use Cecil, great. I can take Cecil back if needed. It gets it out of your hand if you want to play that in 8. At least it's out of your hand, and I have lots of stuff to attack. It's really hard for you to play safely. And your combos aren't really flipping anything extra. And if Turdz takes the same in 2, that might be hard to meet, actually. Oh, that could be tough to meet. Oh, maybe this is trouble. Because if Turdz takes the same in 2, you can't really go 1 because of Saz in 4. This might be tricky. I might be deeply wrong here. Yeah, and you don't have a good way to block 2. If you're going to get rid of the squares, you really want to be blocking 6. And you really want to do it with Shu Yan, I think. So for me, the big question is Shu Yan 6, Tifa 2. Where's the tie? Sabin 9. You're down 6-4. I think they can go Saz in 1. Okay, this seems legitimately dangerous to me out of nowhere. W was right. This was a bad starter. Um, yeah, Turdz is really good here at having high numbers facing out that are tough for Deli to deal with. And when that happens, it becomes so hard to set anything up. Right? It's not like you can say, okay, you have all that synergy, but I can play in 7 and set stuff up. Yeah, I missed this. I really would be trying to get Shuyan to work. Shuyan 6, Tifa 2. On Sabin 9, if they go 8, you're down 7-3, but you can play Fafnir in 7 and you tie. But if they go 1, the problem is you can't go 4 because of Cecil and 7. And you can't go 8 because of Cecil and 7. And you can't really go 7 either because of something in 8. So I think that loses. So this is actually very scary. I do not know what I'd play for Deli. I really just want 6 to be the right move, and so I haven't checked anything else because I think it's so scary to leave these squares open. And maybe you just don't have to. There's probably lots of other moves. I've used all my time on that, so that's the move I'm interested in. But I don't see how you hold against 2. If I'm this low on time, I think I'm playing it anyway and hoping I find a way to hold against 2, which might be weird practical decision making. We do see 9, 2, 8, 9, and 6. Um, so Deli is, I guess, on the same page as me, but oh man, this is very dangerous. Saz and Cecil really beat you in so many lines. I'm going to pop open the solver because I'm a lazy person. And have it start running. Won't say anything from it yet or see where it gets. I won't have it do the current position yet. I'm going to have it run the starting position. So, okay, I liked Deli's move in 3. The solver says it was losing. Solver says losing starter. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't, like, we don't know how many losing starters there were. It might have been that Deli's hand really was this bad, that having, many corners in the same corner just lined up really badly. Yeah, it says this lost actually multiple ways, many ways. 7, Cecil 7 was winning. I thought Deli might have a resource in 2 there, but turns out that was winning. Um, there are wins all over actually against the starter. I'm making sure not to look at stuff in 5 so I don't see if Turd's move was winning because I want that to be a surprise for me. But it is very possible Turd's may have done it. I was wrong. I liked this starter. I'm in fact gonna, I think, have it run. How many moves did Deli have that didn't lose as his starter? I'll have it run that as well. But I think Tifa too. Yeah, it says that Turdz had 6 wins against this starter. This may have been the big hand advantage we were waiting for. You still do have to convert. All right, it's going to take forever to run the first turn thing. So let's see. Did Turdz find one of the 6 wins? It looks like it. Yeah, Deli was lost. So I was on 9, 2, 8, 9, and 6 in part because I didn't know what else he could do. This loses. It loses to multiple things. I assumed Tifa in 2, but it apparently also loses to Sid in 2. Ah, update, I have put in the wrong cards. All of that was meaningless. I put in A855 instead of A955. Scratch everything I said. We got to rerun it all. Let's get it thinking. Yeah. I mean, I don't see the tie against Tifa in 2. And it's very hard to find ties that aren't like the standard sequences of 1-9, just because without combo, you kind of have to capture things immediately. Okay, so far, it's looked at about 15 moves. It hasn't found a win yet against Deli's starter. It found a bunch of wins last time. Okay, Cecil 7 was not a win. Okay, so I was right about that. I'm glad I was right about that because I thought Cecil 7 Deli has good replies in 2 now. It was not a win, but Deli's move was losing. And we'll see if it was the game continuation. Turdz has picked up Tifa. I think Turdz is going to go up 1-0. There is the question, how many ties did Deli have from the start? If he loses here? I think I'm underestimating 5 on this rule set. Last time with the wrong cards put in, it popped up a bunch of wins in 5. And this time it is also popping up wins in 5. It is saying Cyan in 5 is winning for Turdz. Also Saz in 5 or Saz in 6. Both moves that are kind of surprising. So yeah, Deli was lost. Deli goes 6, which I thought was the logical square. Turdz has 1 win. He had to find, yep, Tifa in 2. And Turdz is going to win this. Turdz is going to take a 1-0 lead. So it said last time when I put the cards in wrong that Turdz had 6 wins against Deli's starter. This time it finds 4 wins against Deli's starter. It looks like in 5 and 6 in general. 5 and 6 appear to be the key squares. Let me see. What's the 4th win? There are 2 wins in 5, 1 in 6, and 1 in 2. It's like 1 of 2 or 9. Hard to tell. It's spitting out a lot of info right now, and it all makes a muddle. But yeah, so 1 was a losing starter. But now there is to see, did Deli have any ties with his opening hand? It's checked about, it's slow running first move, so it's checked about 8 moves, and so far all of them lose out of 45. So we'll see, was this just a loss from hands? On the other hand, Turdz played it really well to find the big setup in 5, and like I cannot say Turdz has done anything but perfect play here. But there is a question of whether it was just, was there any chance for Deli to hold this, or was Deli lost from the get-go? Now, if Deli is lost from the get-go, that doesn't mean it's trivially lost, right? But I do think it's really hard to find resistance on this set. So I think, yeah, I mean, Turdz is going to win this. There's no way he blows it from here. And I couldn't find a tie here, and I couldn't find a move to do other than what Deli did in 6. So it's not just that Deli was lost after 3. I think Deli had no chance to create any complications after 3. After Turd's excellent move in 5, which I totally missed. I just, in no rules games, I do not consider 5, but importantly, this is not quite a no rules game. But very interestingly, Saz in 5 also won, and Saz in 5 sets up nothing. So, like, 5 is a square I'm clearly underestimating in no rules type games. Because after Saz in 5, like, it is effectively a no rules game. There's not going to be any combo synergies there. So, there's something about 5 that I'm missing, and Turdz found it through combo synergies, I think, which I missed because I just didn't think to look for them. But also, 5 is actually a much more viable square than I would expect in this type of rule set, which is very interesting to me and worth further exploration, I think. But I do not understand it. If you do understand it, comment below or send me a message. It'd be interesting to explore. As I said, I think these games are interesting. It's just who wins them is too much determined by the hands. There is zero chance Turdz could have won a game so far until this one. And I think there's basically zero chance Deli could have won a game, even though he had some big hand advantages. All right, Deli saying Sabin in 6 would have held, not flipping Cyan. I think this is not true. The solver did say this was losing, and it loses to... it doesn't lose to Tifa in 2, which is why Deli is thinking this was a chance, but it does lose to Saz in 9. Anyway, it's still running on the starters, and it still has not found a starter that ties for Deli. So this may have just been a loss from the hands, which doesn't take away from Turdz having converted it well, but it is also just to say this is a rule set where there's this jump from even to pretty big advantage for hands, just a tie, not much to do. And then there's suddenly this point where it becomes too big an advantage, and suddenly it's just a win, and there's not much to do. Without complications either way. Incidentally, Solver still has not found a tie on move 1 for Deli. Again, Doesn't mean there isn't one, but hasn't gotten there yet. And it's chugging away. All right, we will return to the action. Let's see if we can find how Turdz should win this. So Deli's point is if Turdz plays Saz in 1, I guess Deli wants to go 9 and have Fafnir as sweeper, but Fafnir doesn't sweep. Turdz can go 7. Deli's just trying to complicate at this point. And Turdz can also go 9 immediately. Now, in another line, Deli could tie against 9 by playing Fafnir in 7, but this one he's still down 7-3 after going in 7. It's not 6-4. Also, there's a same now, which I might have missed in the other line. I probably missed that same in another line where Saz actually kills Fafnir. Ooh, bad calculation by me. Anyways, Deli can't lose this 9-1, so I don't think he's trying to. Huge win for Turdz. Congratulations to Turdz. I will be very interested to see if there was any moves that hold for Deli on the starter. Because so far, we're still on all losses. Not having A's in the hand turned out to be a bigger weakness than prior games where someone had a lot of redundant corners. And I think that is telling that this is really no rules vibes, right? All right, Deli says might as well make it a big loss. Sure, that is why he went an 8. He was not making it tricky. He was just going out in style. I guess then you go Fafnir 7 to lose 8-2. Shame you can't get the full 9-1 here. Yeah, he does go Fafnir 7. And Turdz takes a huge win. Turdz has had a tremendous tournament, incidentally. I don't know if I've complimented Turdz's performance enough, but there is now a chance that, because Turdz 2-0'd Seto, but yeah, that Turdz goes 4-0 against Turdz and Seto over the last 2 rounds. That is live. That is very possible. And that would be an unbelievable feather in Turdz's cap. Like, just imagine, like, yeah, someone played random tournaments, needed to win 2 each round, best of 3 against Deli and Seto. Yeah, they went 4-0. No, impossible. What are we talking about? And this is live. This is a chance to happen. All right, I missed a move in my listing of moves. Of course, very big chance not to happen still, but it is live. What move did I miss? 3, 5, 6, 2, 8. I missed 9, 8, 6, 4, and 9. All right, and Turdz wins 8-2. Again, I don't, much like I didn't think the 3 ties proved this rule set was drawish, it's more other things I thought about the rule set. I don't think this result proves it's not drawish. Because so far, the solver has still not found a turn 1 tie for Deli. And I should close other programs to make this run smoother, so it doesn't take as long. Let's close that. That has to stay open. Okay, nothing else I can close. Yeah, huge win for Turdz. Incredible run continues. Just been such a tremendous player. And played like perfectly the whole way, which is perhaps even more impressive. Yeah, so huge congrats to Turdz, who takes a 1-0 lead. Turdz, the only player to have ever beaten Delial in a finals of a major, may be about to do so for the second time. On the other hand, series tied 2-2. Series is 1-0. It's best of three. You know, if these are two even players, we have just gone from 50-50 to 75-25. Okay. I don't want to end this recording until we've gotten whether it was lost from the start, but it is running really slowly. It has not calculated a single move since last I said something. So, hmm. Here's what I'll do. We'll pause. We'll see if that can speed up it running things. And I'll come back either with an answer or with the next game. All right, we're back with a final report, and that report is we have played 4 games of Triple Triad, and every single one of them has been solver perfect. No mistakes made by either player. That's right, Delial was lost for move 1. I would like to retract my apology for having supported his starter, saying I thought it was good, but then it's losing, so it must be bad. It was not bad. Every move was losing, and some moves were losing way worse than that one. So, what are you going to do? Starter's a loss. On the other hand, I don't think that takes away from winning, right? Basically, this set, as we saw from Turdz' really good defenses, is unwinnable unless the random gods smile on you. But the wins are often tricky to find, and that Turdz did convert smoothly is a real credit to him. These are the chances you have to take to win on this set. Turdz takes a 1-0 lead. We will continue the match tomorrow. But worth noting, both players have played completely perfectly, no errors in play. This final game, you might be able to argue that Deli could have put up more resistance. I didn't find more resistance. Maybe you could have. I don't know. I would say no real mistakes have been made by either player. Anytime someone was winning, they played the win. Anytime it was a tie, they played the loss. Deli here was lost from the hands. Again, interesting that not having A's and having kind of clumsy cards that were overpowered was more hurtful than having all cards for the same corner. But I guess that makes sense. It meant he could never grab those little safeties you need to be able to sneak a tie. Very interesting games. I think this rule set, it's not that it leads to bad games, it's that it is unfair, if that makes sense. Because these games were good, but also both players have played perfectly and the match is not even. That's always going to occasionally happen, but it's a lot more likely to happen on this kind of set where it's really hard to induce mistakes. And so the times you win are basically going to be when it's a forced win, and that's what we saw here. That said, Turdz has done great. I really liked his play in all of games 2, 3, and 4. I really liked Deli's play in game 1. I think, again, they've both played flawlessly so far, and Turdz goes into the second day of matches with a 1-0 lead.